Links to donate will be in the chat and on the screen, and ushers will be coming around if you wish to give via cash or check. And I just want to appreciate now the musicians that are joining us today for 3 pieces. We have Marcia Feldman, Valerie Walton, Jane Pereira, and Karen Sauer. And it's a great privilege to work with them. We're going to have, we're going to do what is originally an old set of congregational lyrics from the Shenandoah Harmony, which was then adapted and recorded by Ari and Mia Friedman, called Amelia. Good. Okay. Pardon me. I'm sorry, where are we? Oh, the reading. We're also going to save some space for Heather to talk with you later, too. Okay. Today's reading is an excerpt from the poem When It Really Is Just the Wind and Not a Furious Vexation by Kyle Tran Myre. How many of our ancestors have already taught us, even after the world ends, there is work to do? I see myself in that work. Not the leader, not a lone wolf, just another part of the pack. Because in every universe in which I am alive, it is because of other people. I don't always like them, but I love them. In every universe in which I am alive, it is less because I could fight and more because I could forgive, because I could cooperate, because I could apologize, because I could dance, because I could grow pumpkins in my backyard and leave them at my neighbor's door, asking for nothing in return. In every universe in which I am alive, I am building a first aid kit, a solar panel, a sleeping cat, never a rusty battle axe or rocket launcher. Sure, maybe sometimes a chainsaw, but only for firewood. I am holding a cooking pot, a teddy bear, a photo album, a basketball, a bouquet of flowers. Survival is not a fortress, it is a garden. Survival is not a siren, it is a symphony. And yeah, we fight for it sometimes, but survival is not the fight. It is the healing after the soft hum of someone you trust applying a bandage, the feeling of falling asleep in a safe place.
So friends, if you read the weekly email closely, which I know all of you do, you might be expecting a sermon on repair, which is our monthly theme, a sermon on healing and fixing. And typically I try not to talk about the process of sermon writing in the sermon because it breaks the fourth wall or something like that. But I also think it's worth you knowing that this week after the election news, when the news is still so fresh, but the reality is also sinking in, and the reality as names of extremists are floated for various appointments, the reality as we look more closely at the long and scary road ahead of us, the reality that we don't even know what is going to need to be repaired, what damage will be done and how bad it might be. In light of all of that, the disjointed pieces of my sermon on repair that just weren't coming together felt like that it wasn't the right fit. So instead, I'm preaching an entirely different sermon today, and we'll call it Survival is a Garden. My colleague, the Reverend Molly Hoosh Gordon, writes, I know that the world isn't ending. Or rather, the world is not ending any more than it always already has and is and will, alongside all its beginnings. But at some point in the past week, it kind of felt like it was. Maybe for you, it still does. And if it does, well, I am with you, peering out at the end of the world, wondering what is beginning and thinking about how we will survive the unraveling of all this ending and beginning. I appreciate that Reverend Molly frames this as both a beginning and an ending, and not an ending, any more than it is always ending and always beginning. She goes on to say, I am thinking about our collective survival, which is to say all of us, every last one, especially at every edge and border and in every shadow and teetering place. She continues, I am thinking about our collective survival and praying we can make of it a fortress, a garden, not a fortress. Praying we can make of it a symphony, not a siren. Praying we can make of it a dance party, not a gun. And Kyle Tran Meyer wrote in the poem that was our reading, survival is not a fortress, it is a garden. Survival is not a siren, it is a symphony. And yeah, we fight for it sometimes, but survival is not the fight. It is the healing after. The soft hum of someone you trust applying the bandage. The feeling of falling asleep in a safe place. Friends, I needed this reminder this week. The reminder that in order to survive in the face of authoritarian regimes, in order to survive amidst the death-making institutions of a crumbling empire, in order to survive in this world which seems like it makes less and less sense every passing week, in order to survive with our hearts and our spirits and our souls and our integrity intact, we cannot build fortresses. We cannot wall ourselves off and succumb to the isolation and despair that fascism feeds off of. We cannot emulate the violence of these ideologies, and instead we must build something else. Something beautiful, something generative, something life-giving. I've been turning over how we could understand this idea of survival as a garden, and I have several options to consider, each of which are beautiful interpretations on their own. And I'd like to offer these interpretations of how survival might be a garden to us today. Number one, gardens nourish us. In every post-apocalyptic book I have read, which have been a lot, it seems to begin with a garden. Or in a post-apocalyptic world that has been long established, there are many local gardens as food sources. Gardens can literally nourish us with their food and with their nourish us metaphorically with their beauty. And perhaps in this we can find reminders to seek out ways to nourish both our bodies and our souls in order to survive in this moment. Perhaps it is an encouragement to turn toward the local, turn toward that which is tangible, that we can touch, the very real places we can make a difference right here. Because if we are to survive, we need to be nourished. Interpretation number two. Gardens can be overwhelming if you don't take it bit by bit. I have shared a community garden plot with my housemates for many years now, since we've moved to Roslindale almost 7 years ago. And sometimes, often, around late July or early August, I get so overwhelmed with the weed growth that I get stuck. I haven't wanted to go to the garden anymore. I don't even want to look at it. And now I know that many of you will have suggestions for me afterwards about how I can avoid getting myself into this situation in the first place. Possibly earlier in the season, things I could do in May. But let's just assume for a moment that I am not a proficient or particularly committed gardener. And perhaps like our world, so just stick with me with the metaphor here, perhaps we're already in the situation in which the weeds are overwhelming, yeah? And putting in half an hour work here or there feels like it can't possibly make a difference. The new weeds will just crop up even higher than the ones that I just pulled, and by the time I get back to the garden, it will be overwhelming again. I will admit that some years I have given up on the garden in weed overwhelm despair at this point. And to me, this is not entirely unlike how it feels to be looking at the chaos that I know is coming from the oncoming administration, the tactics that they rely on of seeding chaos, the shock and awe methods, overwhelming us with the sheer magnitude of violence and hate and the absurdity of it all. But if I have learned anything from gardening, it is that we need to take it bit by bit, and that we can't focus on the big picture all at once, or else it will be too overwhelming. We can choose one thing to tend. We can tend what is in front of us. We can carve out time day after day, week after week, to show up and tend what needs tending as best we can. I think about some of the local grassroots networks that I know of that are doing incredible tending right now. The Boston Immigration Justice Accompaniment Network, working to reduce the escalating harm of our immigration system. I learned recently about the Pink Haven Coalition, operating with the support of our Unitarian Universalist Association, as well as First Parish in Malden, a local church here in the Boston area, working to create a network of safety and support for trans people who need to relocate to safer climates, safer states, or access gender-affirming care across state lines. Both of these groups made up of a coalition of faith communities, justice seekers, other activist groups, and individuals, and built in direct response to the current political climate, knowing that they can't do everything, but they can do something. And I also think about the longstanding work that many of you are involved in, the UU Urban Ministry, after-school mentoring, peace and justice work in the Middle East, and so much more. And knowing that there will be so many opportunities and so much need to show up and support those among us who will be targeted. Don't get overwhelmed by the weeds, even if they threaten to spring back up again. Put in what work and time and money you can. Pick a small area, find a buddy or a coalition, and trust that together we might be able to cover the whole garden. Number 3, gardens need all sorts of tending. I've already mentioned that gardens need weeding, but they also need planting and protecting small seeds and transplants and watering and nurturing. So let's tend to our own gardens, our communities, nurturing our children, our relationships with each other, our communities of faith, friendship, family. Strong communities of trust and mutual aid and care are what I believe will be our greatest asset in our collective survival. Number 4, gardens are beautiful and messy and organic and diverse. They spring from the ground up and they thrive with diverse and heterogeneous plantings. They cannot be controlled or forced or replicated. Everything that an authoritarian, top-down regime hates. So let us lean into arts and creativity and diversity as forms of resistance. Encourage creativity, individuality, authenticity, and free thinking, which they will hate most of all. Create beauty and joy. Let us make the alternative to authoritarianism so beautiful and so joyful, so playful and loving and fun and wild and free that it is irresistible. Our bodies may be able to survive in a fortress, but our souls need a garden. Number 5, gardens are collective efforts. Just as our message for all ages reminded us, gardens do not belong to any one person or any one being. They depend on so many collective efforts, even if it is just a single human gardener. They need the sun, the rain, the earthworm, and the seeds. Our survival, too, will not be an individual effort. It will and can only be a collective one. And lastly, gardens are life-giving. Friends, in the face of the death-dealing, world-ending ideologies of fascism, of authoritarianism, nationalism, misogyny, transphobia, the list goes on and on. In the face of all of this, anything that is life-giving and beautiful is worth saving. Anything that allows us to grow and connect and repair and love, anything that is life-giving is an act of resistance, an act of hope. My colleague, the Reverend Molly Hoosh Gordon again. World ending is what empire does, because ending is the point. Ending what is wild and free and unpredictable and full of promise. Endings are contained and whole, complete and controlled, the deepest desire of empire. World continuing is what we who resist do. We continue. We continue to grow and nourish and hope. We continue to love and grieve and dance. We continue to struggle because there will never be an end to it, because endings are the work of empire. We continue. Friends, in this time when it feels like one world may be ending, may we look for and may we bring into the world, and may we nurture the small acts, the large acts that are all around us, that ensure our survival, every last one of us, and ensure that our survival is a garden and not a fortress. May it be so, and amen. I invite us to rise in body or spirit for our closing hymn, There Is More Love. It's number 95 in your gray hymnal, and it will also be on the screen. Thank you. Please be seated. Our closing words are from Nikita Gill. Everything is on fire, but everyone I love is doing beautiful things and trying to make life worth living. And I don't know that I have to believe in everything, but I believe in that. Friends, may we go out and build a garden and not a fortress. May our survival be a symphony and not a siren. And may we do it together. We have several announcements this morning. First of all, if you're joining us here in person, I invite you to stick around for coffee hour in our parish hall, which is through these doors into the breezeway and into our other building. And if you're joining us on Zoom this morning, I invite you to stick around for our breakout rooms. I have several more announcements, but before I do that, I would like to ask, would you look around and raise your hand if you feel like you know the names of maybe 50% of the people in the room? Raise your hand if you know 50% of the names of the people in the room. Raise your hand if you know 100% of the names of people in the room. I often tell people to contact somebody if you would like to follow up about any of my announcements. And I don't assume that you always know who those people are, so if you ever need the contact information or to be connected with somebody, please feel free to follow up in our weekly email where the contact information usually is, or email me or our office administrator, Liz, if you need to be connected to any of our goings-on at the church. So here are some of the goings-on at the church that you might want to reach out to people about. First of all, our next week is our winter fair, and we are seeking bakers. The winter fair is next Sunday. We're also, I assume, seeking more signups for there's more ways to get involved if you would like to, and you can see Jennifer Buchwald if you'd like to sign up. You can also see Tori Harrington or Susan Karen if you'd like to bake. Tori, thank you for standing up. If you'd like to bake for the bake sale at the winter fair. This coming Saturday, correct, from 10 to 2. I did say Sunday. Usually we're here on Sundays, just autopilot. Today after the service, we will gather for a space of reflection. Rose and I are we're piloting a reflection space on our monthly worship themes. This month is the practice of repair, so if you were really hoping that we were going to talk about repair today in worship, you can come after church and chat about the theme of repair in our, from 12 to 1 today in the basement, in the new meeting room in the basement in the parish hall. Monday night, we also have a book group sponsored by Diana's List, our group focused on peace and justice issues in the Middle East. And the potluck will be at the home of Deb and Mark Ferenz. Again, if you'd like to be connected with them or know where they live, feel free to chat with Deb, who's standing up, or let me know and I'll connect you via email. The book is Against a Loveless World by Susan Abulhawa, and people who haven't read the book are welcome to attend. So Monday evening from 6 to 8. We also have a new communications team. Gretchen Dietz has been doing communications for forever, since we had a website. And joining the communications team are Jake Bittner and Lori Sutherland, and they also have a new email address, which is communications@tparkerchurch.org. So if you'd like to get in touch with the whole communications team to update the website, put something in the weekly email, etc., please email the communications team. And finally, an update from our board. We've updated the mask policy, and we are fully mask optional in the whole congregation in worship and during other activities, including choir rehearsal, coffee hour, small group gatherings, and events. And we encourage you to stay home if you are unwell. And with that, our house band will close with Green Linnet, and we want to thank you all so much for providing us with such gorgeous music today.